I'm Janet Haight, and we're in Spokane, Washington. I started in crop insurance in 1976, pre-multi-peril, so it was just crop hail in those days, and worked for a company for 18 years, and ended up as the division manager of the last 3 years, which were probably the worst 3 years I ever spent. I like working directly with the farmers, and so I got my license, started my own agency, did some consulting work for other companies, and then when Gretchen graduated from college, I convinced her that she should work for me for a while, and she's still here.
I graduated with a teaching degree, and so in the middle of a winter quarter, so I thought, well, what am I going to do? You know, you can't really apply for a teaching degree in the middle of the quarter, so I thought I'll come to work for Mom for a while. 12 years later, yeah, we're still here. And then I bought the business from her. Well, I worked for her for 11 years, and then I bought the business from her in 13, and kind of taking it on. Mom's my ace in the pocket when I can't figure out questions about things or complicated things, so.
Because we deal with a lot of different crops, like you said, about 30 different crops, all over the Northwest. Oregon, Idaho, Washington, Utah. And so we have perennial crops, we have, you know, your wheat farmers, we have seed beans, sugar beets. The biggest ones we've had in the last few years is actually prevented planting. And when prevented planting came out, it was when the Midwest flooded. And so I was working at the company then, and I thought, oh, I'll never have to learn preventive planting. That'll never happen
Not
out here.
Northwest.
Not in the Northwest. Mm-mm. And then in the irrigated area, where we're talking about where they grow all the different crops, they got short of water.
They don't have enough water in their reserves and couldn't plant their crops. Right. And I would say in the dryland wheat guys, it's mainly drought or, well, perennials, it's usually hail. Or sunburn.
Freeze. Yeah. Those are the main ones. We have dryland farmers, obviously, with the drought, and then the irrigated if they run out of water, or then in certain parts of eastern Idaho, you can have frost really early with the potatoes. Been through that where they had to just plow them down because they were, or they put them in the cellar and then they ran out the doors by the spring. And so those are our main issues. And then there's the, you know, with the revenue products, that's the way our commodity prices are. At least they have something the bankers want, that guarantee of a value of their crop, and so that's a big deal.
Spokane's a big city, but every other outlying area is an agricultural town, I think. I mean, as far as our area.
Right, I grew up in the Midwest where everything's flat, corn and soybeans, wall to wall. And out here, you have pockets of agriculture just because of the way our terrain is. I mean, you can't farm every hillside. Sometimes they do, and scares me, but so you have pockets, but those pockets of agriculture support the towns around them, no matter whether it's, you know, Portland or, of course there's a lot of other industry too, but agriculture is very important, and it's a huge variety of crops, and you can be in what this area she's talking about, the Palouse, down close to where University or Washington State. Yeah. There's one county that you could be on one side of that county and be getting 40 bushel grain, and you're getting the best you'll ever get. And then there's another band of it where they could be getting like 60 bushels, and then there's another band they could be getting 100 bushels, like an irrigated grower. That's all in one county.
Yeah, I was very surprised we started writing in a new county down in the Palouse, and I said, well, those are really high yields, you know, for this guy. Does that seem right, Mom, or was it yield? And she said, well, for the Palouse, yeah, because I was compared to looking at other dryland farmers that are over in the Dalles area in Wasco County, in those areas, and those yields are about half of what you're getting on the Palouse, but they're all non-irrigated. So it's just, and that's just the Northwest, I think, the variety that, yeah. And most of what I hear from a farmer is, I don't want to collect on my crop insurance, because what I'm going to make on my crop insurance compared to what I could sell my crop for is a pittance, you know. So I feel like they're trying to insure so that they can then stay in business the next year, not have a total wipeout of their whole crop or to make money off of it.
I don't know how they'd ever
I don't know how you could
make money and do it repeatedly. We're just collecting on crop insurance because pretty soon you wouldn't have a yield to even insure or the finances to survive.
Well, I guess if you consider, let's just example, a wheat farmer, he has September 30th as his sales closing. He reports his production to us in November, and then he has until July to report his acres to us. So we're in contact with him all year long. And I think as far as relationship goes, when I first started working for Mom, she would say, we'll send that report and all these reports because that's that person's cousin and their brother, and this is this person's, whatever. And I'm like, how do you remember all that? But when you know the relationship and you can send it and do those little extras like, well, here's your and your dad's report instead of going to dad's house to get the report, because you've built the relationship and you know the families well enough to know how they interact and who does what. I think that when you can only compete on service is huge. They've got a lot of things going on, and as a grower, I would never want to be a grower. You have to market your crop, buy your crop, all the things they have to think about. I feel like if I can take care of their crop insurance or their one fraction of their whole operation, and I can do it well for them, then I feel like I'm doing them a benefit to them. And Mom's family grew up on a farm, so I don't just look at them as growers. I look at them as, well, that could be my uncle, or that could be my grandpa, or, and that it's their livelihood. Mm-hmm. That's what their family is based on. That's what their income is based on. Maybe other generations or other families are based on that. So I think it's a big deal.
Usually the first thing when I meet somebody, the first time I ask them, what's your concern? What's, of the crops you raise, what's the most important to you? What's your concern? And I'll point blank tell somebody, don't take this coverage unless you have to. Because for instance, on alfalfa hay, you're raising it, its quality is what they're getting paid on, and it's just a tonnage policy. They get their tons most of the time. And so that's my only sales pitch, is to ask them what they're concerned with, what's most important to them, what are they most afraid of, and then explain to them how crop insurance will help them or what it won't do too. I want the grower to understand when he's going to get paid. He's also going to understand when he doesn't get paid, because it doesn't, there's no 100% fix for anything.
Like, crop insurance in general is so important for people to understand that it's available for them if they're growing. And I feel like agriculture, especially from my generation, you don't see as many people get into agriculture, which then makes sustaining those farms that much more important for whoever does take them over eventually. Because you don't always see the next generation taking it over, but they become bigger, like LLCs, or it's just the mom and dad farms then become corporations. And I guess just the importance of understanding what you're paying for is my biggest thing, because I feel like there's a lot of growers that don't always understand why they have what they have.
That's true.